Part 1. A normal shift. At 4:47 p.m., Elena Brooks checked the time for the third time in under a minute and told herself to stop. The bus was on schedule. Traffic was light. The sky was clear in that pale, winter blue way that made everything feel deceptively calm. There was no reason for the tightness in her chest, no reason for the quiet unease crawling up her spine. Still, she adjusted her mirror. Elena had been driving Route 61 for 11 years. Same stretch of road, same stops, same rhythm. You learned to feel the city through the steering wheel, where it resisted, where it flowed, where it held its breath. Northgate was the last stop. After that, she'd head back to the depot, clock out, and drive home to an apartment that smelled faintly of laundry detergent and old books. She'd heat leftovers, maybe call her mother, maybe not. A normal evening. A forgettable one. The bus doors hissed open at Maple Street. 3 passengers boarded. A teenage boy with headphones too loud. An elderly man carrying a paper grocery bag. And a woman in a thin coat, her eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. The woman hesitated before tapping her pass. "You okay?" Elena asked automatically. The woman nodded too fast. "Yes. Sorry. Just tired." Elena watched her in the mirror as she walked down the aisle and sat near the back, gripping her bag like it might disappear. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. At Oak Avenue, no one got off. At Pine Street, no one boarded. By the time they passed the old rail crossing, and used for decades, Elena realized something was wrong. The radio crackled. She turned the volume up. Nothing but static. That wasn't normal. "Elena to dispatch," she said, pressing the button. "Do you copy?" Silence. She tried again. Still nothing. She glanced at the dashboard. Fuel, fine. Engine temperature, normal. No warning lights. Everything looked exactly the way it should, except the road ahead. The traffic lights at Cedar Junction were dark. All of them. No blinking red. No emergency override. Just black. Elena slowed instinctively. Cars were stopped at odd angles in the intersection, drivers stepping out, confused, phones held up like compasses that no longer worked. "What's going on?" The elderly man called from his seat. "Probably a power issue," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "We'll be fine." But as she pulled closer, she noticed something else. The street was too quiet. No distant sirens. No engine noise beyond the idling cars. No hum of the city she'd known for years. Just wind. She rolled to a stop before the intersection. The woman in the thin coat stood up suddenly. "Don't go through," she said. Elena turned. "Excuse me." The woman swallowed. "They closed the bridge." "What bridge?" "The Northgate one," the woman said. "I came from there. They said no more vehicles. No buses." Elena felt a small chill. "Who said?" The woman opened her mouth. And at that moment, every phone on the bus buzzed at once. The teenage boy pulled off his headphones. Whoa. Elena didn't look at her own phone. She already knew, deep in her bones, that whatever this was, it wasn't small. Outside, far beyond the dark intersection, something boomed. Not an explosion. A collapse. The sound of something massive giving way. The grocery bag slipped from the old man's hands, apples rolling down the aisle. Elena tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Northgate was still 3 miles away. And suddenly, she wasn't sure they were supposed to get there at all. Part 2. The road that should exist. Elena put the bus in park. She didn't announce it. She didn't need to. The engine idled low, a steady mechanical breathing that felt louder now that everything else had gone quiet. Outside, a man in a suit stood in the middle of the intersection, gesturing wildly at a stopped sedan. Somewhere a horn blared once, then cut off. "Elena," the old man said, leaning forward in his seat. "I've lived here 40 years. That sound just now." "I know," she said. "I heard it too." She picked up the radio again. "Dispatch, this is Route 61 at Cedar Junction. Do you copy?" "Static." She released the button and tried not to let her hands shake. The woman in the thin coat was still standing. Up close, Elena could see that her hands were trembling, knuckles white around the strap of her bag. "What do you mean they closed the bridge?" Elena asked. The woman hesitated, like she was deciding how much truth to give. "I was walking across it this morning. They stopped everyone halfway and turned us around. Said there were structural concerns." "Structural concerns don't shut down a city," the teenage boy said, half joking, half scared. The woman looked at him. "They do when they've been ignored too long." Elena felt that chill again. The Northgate Bridge wasn't new. Everyone knew that. It had been patched, reinforced, inspected, debated on the news, and then forgotten, like so many things that worked just well enough to avoid attention. Okay, Elena said, standing. Nobody panic. I'm going to pull us over and figure out a detour. She eased the bus to the curb just before the intersection. As she opened the doors, a wave of cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet concrete and something metallic she couldn't place. Two drivers from nearby cars approached immediately. Do you know what's happening? One of them asked. My GPS just stopped updating. I don't, Elena said honestly. But I'm not moving until I do. People are saying the bridge dropped, the other driver said. Like, part of it. Into the river. Elena's chest tightened. That's not confirmed, she said, more to herself than to them. From the back of the bus, the old man stood slowly. My daughter lives on the other side. The teenage boy looked up. My school's there. The woman in the coat sat back down, eyes closed, as if she'd known this moment was coming and was tired of waiting for it. Elena closed the doors again. She couldn't turn around easily. The road was narrow. The cars boxed her in. Even if she could, protocol said to wait for instructions. But protocol hadn't planned for this. Her phone buzzed in her jacket pocket. She pulled it out. No service. Then one bar. Then none again. A message loaded halfway before freezing. Bridge, avoid, emergency. It vanished. She exhaled slowly through her nose. Listen, she said to the bus, projecting calm she wasn't sure she felt. We're going to stay put until I get confirmation. That's the safest thing. A lie. Or maybe just a hope. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then more. People outside began arguing. Someone started filming. Another person shouted that they needed to get home before dark. That's when Elena noticed the water. Beyond the intersection, past the warehouses, the river should have been invisible from here. It wasn't. A dark line crept across the road's surface ahead, thin at first, then spreading, reflecting the pale sky like a broken mirror. Water was coming up through the storm drains. That's not good, the teenage boy said quietly. The old man crossed himself. Elena stared. If the bridge had partially collapsed, debris could be choking the river. Backflow, flooding, and Northgate, low-lying, densely packed, would be the first to feel it. She made a decision she knew she'd answer for later. She stood, reached for the overhead speaker, and pressed the button. Everyone, she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. We're not waiting anymore. She released the brake and turned the wheel. The bus lurched slowly away from the intersection, taking a side road she'd only ever used during construction detours. It wasn't on her route, but it existed, and right now that was enough. Part 3. People you carry. The side road narrowed almost immediately. Elena slowed to a crawl, the tires crunching over gravel that hadn't been touched in years. On either side, warehouses loomed, blank concrete walls tagged with faded graffiti, loading docks chained shut, windows like dark, unblinking eyes. This isn't a bus road, the teenage boy said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I know, Elena replied. She leaned forward slightly, hands firm on the wheel. She'd driven this stretch exactly once before, during a marathon that rerouted half the city. Back then, there'd been barricades, signs, police waving her through. Now there was only silence. The bus rocked gently as it crossed a shallow dip where water had already begun to pool. The woman in the thin coat stood again, bracing herself against a pole. You're heading toward the service lanes. Yes. They're higher ground, she said. At least at first. Elena glanced at her in the mirror. How do you know that? The woman hesitated. I used to work for the city. Infrastructure planning. Of course you did, Elena thought. Of course today would bring all the right people together at exactly the wrong time. Then you know where this road goes, Elena said. The woman nodded once. If it's still passable, it'll reconnect near the old freight underpass. From there, you can reach Ridgeway. Ridgeway sat above the river line. Older neighborhoods. Narrow streets. Less flood risk. Good, Elena said. Behind her, tension eased slightly. People shifted in their seats, listening now, not just hearing, but trusting. That realization hit Elena harder than the rising water. They were watching her. The old man moved closer to the front. My name's Arthur, he said. If you need help, anything, I'm here. She smiled at him, small but genuine. Thank you, Arthur. The teenage boy followed. I'm Miles. The woman hesitated, then said, Claire. Names change things. They always did. The bus rounded a bend, and the road dropped away in front of them. Elena slammed the brake. Water covered the pavement ahead, rippling gently, deceptively calm. A sedan sat half-submerged at an angle, abandoned, its trunk open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Miles swore under his breath. Arthur sat down heavily. Claire stepped forward, peering through the windshield. That wasn't flooded 20 minutes ago. Elena's pulse hammered. She checked the mirrors, then looked behind them. The way back was worse. Water surged across the road they'd just driven, rising fast, fed by the river and whatever else had failed upstream. They were boxed in. The bus creaked softly, a living thing suddenly unsure of its place. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. Think. The bus was heavy, high clearance. But water was unpredictable, stronger than it looked, capable of lifting metal if it wanted to. Can we go through? Miles asked. No, Claire said immediately. If the current catches the side, we'll tip. Arthur's voice shook. Then what do we do? Elena opened her door. Cold air rushed in. She stepped down carefully onto the flooded pavement, water seeping into her shoes instantly. It was colder than she expected, shockingly so, and it moved with purpose, tugging at her ankles. She waded forward a few steps, testing depth with her foot. Not yet impassable, but soon. She looked around. To the right, a chain-link fence leaned inward, half-collapsed. Beyond it, a narrow service ramp led upward toward the underpass Claire had mentioned. It wasn't meant for buses, but it sloped up. Elena returned to the driver's seat, water dripping from her cuffs. There's a ramp, she said. It's tight, and it's not safe. No one spoke. But staying here isn't safe either. Arthur nodded. Do it. Miles swallowed. Yeah. Claire met Elena's eyes. If you miss the angle, we scrape. If we scrape too much, we stop. Elena exhaled slowly. She turned the wheel all the way right. The bus groaned as she eased it forward, tires slipping slightly before catching. Metal screamed as the side brushed the fence. Sparks flew. Someone screamed. Elena didn't stop. The ramp rose sharply, the bus straining, engine roaring in protest. Water rushed beneath them, chasing, angry. For a moment, a terrifying, weightless moment, the bus slowed to nothing. Then the tires found grip. They climbed. When the bus leveled out at the top, Elena pulled the brake and sat there, chest heaving. Behind her, no one cheered. They just breathed. Because they all knew now. This wasn't just about getting home. This was about getting out. Part 4. The Weight of Decisions. The underpass smelled like oil and damp stone. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, each drop echoing too loudly in the hollow space. Elena killed the engine to give it a moment to cool, and the sudden silence felt heavier than the roar had been. Outside, the sky was changing. The pale afternoon blue had thickened into something gray and metallic, the kind of light that made time feel unstable, like evening could arrive all at once. We can't stay long, Claire said, scanning the far end of the underpass. If the river keeps rising, this will flood too. Elena nodded. Her hands were still trembling. She flexed them slowly, grounding herself. Does anyone know another way up? She asked. Arthur shook his head. Not for something this size. Miles glanced at the bus windows. People are going to come. As if summoned by the words, a figure appeared at the far mouth of the underpass. Then another, then several more. They moved fast, splashing through shallow water, waving their arms. Bus, someone shouted. Hey, wait. Elena's stomach dropped. Within minutes, they were surrounded. A woman carrying a toddler. A man with a bleeding forearm wrapped in a torn shirt. Two teenagers soaked to the knees, breathless and wide-eyed. An older couple leaning on each other for balance. Please, the woman said, holding the child closer. We can't get through the streets. Everything's blocked. Elena looked back at the bus. Capacity, nearly full. Standing room, limited. Weight, already high. She knew the numbers. She always did. Claire stepped beside her. If we overload, we risk stalling on the next incline. Miles whispered, but we can't just. Arthur cleared his throat. There's room to stand. People can hold on. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. This was the part no training manual prepared you for, the part where every choice cost something. She opened the doors. Everyone listen carefully, she said, voice firm. We are taking as many as we safely can. But you must follow instructions exactly. No pushing. No arguing. Relief broke across faces like sunlight. They boarded quickly, quietly, as if afraid the bus might disappear if they moved too loudly. Elena counted automatically, adjusted weight in her head, moved people forward, spread them out. When the doors closed again, the bus felt different, heavier, warmer, alive in a way it hadn't been before. A man near the back asked, "Where are you taking us?" "Ridgeway," Elena said. "Higher ground. Emergency shelter, hopefully." "Hopefully," someone echoed. She met their eyes in the mirror. That's the truth. She started the engine. It hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long. Several people gasped. Then it caught. Elena guided the bus forward, out of the underpass and onto a narrow street that climbed steadily uphill. Water streamed down it now, flowing the wrong way, like the city itself was trying to escape. Halfway up, a loud crack echoed behind them. Someone screamed. Elena didn't look back. "Hold on," she said into the speaker. Both hands, feet planted. The bus strained again, slower this time. The incline steepened. Claire grabbed a pole. "If we stop." "I know," Elena said. Her foot stayed steady on the accelerator. The bus crept forward, inch by inch, engine screaming its defiance. At the top, just as the street leveled out, the lights flickered on. Street lamps, porch lights, windows glowing with sudden, fragile life. A cheer rose from the bus, short, disbelieving, choked with relief. Elena pulled to the curb and shut the engine down. People laughed, cried, hugged strangers. Arthur sat heavily, eyes wet. "You saved us." Elena swallowed. "Not yet." She stepped down from the bus. Ahead, Ridgeway stretched out, crowded sidewalks, open doors, people waving others inside. A community improvising survival in real time. But behind them, down the hill, the city was dark, and the water was still rising. Elena turned back to the bus. She knew, deep down, that this would not be her last trip. Part 5, Going Back Down. Night arrived without asking permission. It didn't fall so much as it closed in. Clouds thickening, streetlights fighting the dark in uneven pools of yellow. Ridgeway buzzed with noise now. Doors slamming, voices calling names, radios crackling with partial updates and rumors layered on top of one another. Elena stood on the sidewalk beside her bus, hands on her hips, listening. Bridge section confirmed down. No ETA on repairs. Shelters at capacity. Stay where you are if you're above floodline. Someone pressed a bottle of water into her hand. She didn't remember who. Arthur had been taken in by a family 2 blocks up. Miles disappeared with a group of students toward the high school gym. Claire stayed close, scanning the streets like she was mapping them in her head. "You could stop," Claire said quietly. "You've done enough." Elena looked at the bus. The side panel was scraped raw where it had met the fence. Mud streaked the wheels. The route number still glowed faintly in the dark, stubborn and familiar. "I could," Elena said. She imagined her apartment, dry, intact, waiting. She imagined taking off her wet shoes, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching the news explain what she had lived through. And then she imagined the underpass. The people who hadn't made it to the bus in time. The ones still knocking on doors that wouldn't open. The ones who believed, wrongly, that help would come to them. She climbed back into the driver's seat. Claire followed. "You're serious." "I know the roads," Elena said. "I know what the bus can handle. And if it can't." Elena met her eyes. "Then it can't." Claire nodded once. "Then I'm coming." Elena keyed the radio. Static. Then a voice. "Any transit units?" Repeat. "Any transit units able to assist?" Elena pressed the button. Route 61 responding. "I'm at Ridgeway." A pause. Long enough to doubt. Then, "Copy. Be advised. Conditions are deteriorating fast." "Understood," Elena said. She pulled away from the curb. Going downhill felt wrong immediately. Water streamed across the road in shining sheets. Debris floated past. Branches, plastic bins, something that looked uncomfortably like part of a door. They reached the edge of Ridgeway and stopped. Below them, the city was a broken grid of darkness and scattered light. Sirens wailed somewhere far off, distorted by distance and water. Elena adjusted the mirrors. "Hold on," she said, to herself as much as to anyone else. They descended slowly. At the underpass, the ramp was gone. Water rushed through the space where it had been, a churning, violent current that filled the entire width. Claire stared. "We can't cross that." Elena nodded. She turned the bus around with careful precision, heart pounding, and headed east, toward a route she'd never driven in daylight, let alone like this. They found people. A man standing on the roof of his car, waving a flashlight. A family trapped on a median, water at their knees. Two nurses walking uphill, refusing help until Elena insisted. Each stop made the bus heavier. Each mile made the road worse. At one point, the engine sputtered. Elena eased off, coaxing it back, whispering encouragement like it could hear her. By midnight, the bus was full again. By 1, there was nowhere left to put people. At 2, the rain intensified. They made one final climb toward Ridgeway, engine screaming, water clawing at the tires. When they reached the top, Elena shut the bus down and sat there, shaking. No one spoke. Finally, Claire said softly, "You can stop now." Elena nodded. She leaned her forehead against the steering wheel. Outside, the city continued to fight for itself. But for this one night, on this one route, the bus had been enough.